but the Chinese social media giant WeChat has been enabling payments for some time. We are joined now by WeChat's representatives in the region, the Media Vantage, and Sales Director Rahul Srivapakesh. It's lovely to have you, Rahul. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Do you want to just give us a sense of perspective first for how big WeChat actually is?
So WeChat has active users of about 1.1 billion globally. WeChat Pay also does about 1 billion transactions per day. So it's a complete ecosystem for everything social media in the Chinese market.
And how does the WeChat Pay actually work? What happens when I pay with it?
So it's basically on QR code technology. To give you an example, when I was in China about a month back, everyone over there only used the QR code system. So the taxi driver had a QR code on the back of a seat. Every restaurant had a QR code pasted on their table. So that's just how they transact. Cash is used very less in that market.
And does it go through a bank at any stage? Who actually enables the payment?
Yes, so anyone using WeChat Pay has to have their national ID in China attached to it. This is basically so that there is no fraudulent uses of funds.
And outside China, it's beginning to get more traction as well, isn't it?
Correct, yeah. So obviously Chinese who are moving outside of China use it as a tool to communicate, to research. But places like India are now adopting WeChat quite extensively. Singapore, Hong Kong, Malaysia, Indonesia, all these markets are really adopting WeChat at an exponential rate.
And you're WeChat's local partner, you're their representative here.
That's right.
What are you doing for them?
So we are helping grow their commercial interests in this market. So there are a lot of brands in the Middle East who are trying to target the affluent Chinese who are visiting over here. So because it is an all-encompassing Instagram, Facebook, Amazon, eBay, all in one, this is the single platform that brands can use to kind of attract them with their advertising.
Well, we're interested this morning, particularly in what's happening with WeChat Pay here. There's been a lot of headlines over the last year about vendors in the UAE, malls, big retail groups, entertainment groups as well, starting to take WeChat Pay. What needs to be put in place for that to happen here?
So we do that for brands in the Middle East. So we have done it for Mall of the Emirates, Rivoli Group, Warner Brothers, Al Fathem. There is a technical procedure that has to happen, basically verification of the company's trade licenses and the names. You have to create an official WeChat account for brands to enable payments over here.
Let's look at what's happening in a couple of key sectors here. There's retail, which we've talked about. There's also the hospitality industry. How big an investment is it for the likes of Majid Al Futtaim, which owns Mall of the Emirates, or MR, which is putting this into all of their hotels, to get the infrastructure in place to be able to accept these payments?
The infrastructure is not expensive, right? But the adoption of people to use it is what really matters. So even for Mall of the Emirates, they needed to actually promote that they're now accepting WeChat for it to get more adopted. The technology behind it is just a basic official account and a QR code. So there's not much involved in that.
Do they need to have a local banking partner here?
Yes, they should have a local banking partner over here, but brands can use their banks that they usually have, like Emirates NBD or any of the other big ones, to enable WeChat Pay.
What have you heard from the people that you have enabled WeChat Pay with, the brands, about the usage of it? What have they seen?
So most of the brands identify that China is an important market. There are a lot of Chinese tourists coming into Dubai. Just over the New Year's, we saw about over 100,000 people coming in. What brands need to do is basically use this platform to attract more of the audience. So to give you an example, Rixos is now working with us to enable WeChat and WeChat Pay to kind of promote their spa offering, their F&B offerings within the property.
So in terms of where you fit in or a local partner fits in, what's your role?
So our role is their commercial interest. So first of all, setting up an official WeChat account. There are two kinds of accounts, official and non-official. In terms of advertising, you're only able to advertise on the platform if you have an official account. Also, we do something called a mini program for the client. So we are doing it from all the Emirates and Rixos, where it's an app within an app. It's a complete ecosystem where you can make bookings, reservations, pay for things all within that system. So we enable all of that for brands over here.
They're not the only people, though, in the Chinese digital payment market, because Alibaba has Alipay, and there are people here who are taking Alipay as well. Are you compete? I mean, do you see it as a competition with vendors and merchants to get WeChat Pay in above or before Alipay?
So, it's the competitive environment, right? Alipay and Union Pay all came in much before WeChat Pay. However, WeChat Pay has that social element into it. So a person can see the restaurant menu and order and pay all within the same app as well. So that's the USP of WeChat, where it's creating that social environment.
Clearly, we're looking at the big Chinese tourism market here, predominantly. Nearly 1 million last year. We probably will top 1 million this year, or be there and thereabouts. So that's significant. But for residents here in Dubai, either Emiratis or expats living here who don't have any cultural affinity with China, are we going to be embracing this? Is that going to be a meaningful part of what happens?
I think eventually it will, because the amount of trade the UAE does with that market is very important. Because it's also primarily a communication tool. A lot of people that I interact with in markets like Hong Kong, Singapore, and China do not use WhatsApp. They're all on WeChat because it's what's familiar to them, and therefore we will need to adapt it if we need to do business with those markets.
But that's a special case, isn't it? That's if you happen to be doing a lot of business with Chinese-speaking parts of the world. But if you're just a regular person living in Dubai, can we see in 5-10 years' time WeChat being a truly global brand in the way that Coca-Cola is a global brand and people using it on a day-to-day basis, in the way that people are using Huawei phones on a day-to-day basis here? Will they be embracing this WeChat? Will me and Brandy and Malcolm have a WeChat group on our phones to discuss the business breakfast rather than a WhatsApp group? Do we see that adoption increasing? And once we're in there, to use your phrase, ecosystem, then when we go and buy a cup of coffee downstairs, using this to pay for it?
I absolutely think so. It's just because of the so many things that WeChat can do, right? Other than the payments aspect of it. If you imagine in one app having Instagram, Facebook, Amazon, eBay, everything within one app, so you don't really even have to leave that. It makes it so much more easier as opposed to using 5 different apps to do the same thing. It reduces your time or your interaction spent on the phone. So I think in the next 5 years, we will see it adopted in the local market as well.
I've had a couple of questions come in for you. 4001, by the way, I'll use the messenger app if you do have a question for Rahul. Someone asking, how do you top up the balance in a WeChat wallet from the UAE? Can you do that?
Currently, you cannot top up if you have an individual account, like an individual user account. You cannot top it up. You need to have a Chinese bank or a Chinese national ID to attach that and then transfer the money into your WeChat Pay.
So another question: is there a maximum transaction amount that someone can do here through WeChat Pay, whether it's in a single transaction or a month? Is there a cap on it when people are traveling?
Currently, if you're traveling from China outbound and you have money on your WeChat Pay, there isn't a cap on how much you can spend. However, if you go over a certain threshold, there could be a certain investigation, or they would ask you what was that source of funds or where did it get spent.
What do you see the future for this looking like, Rahul? Do you expect eventually every merchant to have 5 or 6 different pay, whether it's Samsung Pay, Alipay, for everyone just to offer all of them as a matter of course? Do you expect to see 1 or 2 global winners emerging? What do you think it will look like?
I think we already see it in the local market, right? You go to a lot of restaurants or even shopping malls, you do see signs for Alipay, Union Pay, and WeChat Pay on the till, right? The differentiating factor will be who makes it easier and more seamless, which app can offer you much more than just the payment gateway. And I think Samsung Pay, Apple Pay, all of that will probably get overtaken by someone like WeChat Pay because of its ecosystem that it's building within it.
Or Facebook, which would be the next global currency, global digital payment system to come to market if they have their way.
Well, regarding Facebook, we already know the privacy issues surrounding Facebook. So to have a payment gateway through Facebook, I'd like to comment on that once it's actually rolled out.
Great talk to you. Appreciate you joining us this morning to share some insights on what is a global phenomenon, not just the rise of WeChat Pay, but the rise of fintech generally and technology companies into financial services. Rahul Shivaprakash is the sales director at the Media Advantage. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me, guys.